Thailand shut down Maya Bay, famously featured in Leonardo DiCaprio's The Beach. Vietnam's Da Luc Beach has almost more plastic than sand. The Philippines announced a temporary closure of Boracay, which has been called a cesspool. And disturbing videos and images of plastic-filled Bali have been emerging after authorities declared a garbage emergency.
It's an atrocity that even the most remote places on our planet are now filled with the testimony of our filthy habits.
Local authorities have been forced to close beaches so they can get a handle on the mounting piles of trash and plastic, some of which ends up being swept into our oceans. Oceanographers say it is not only having an impact on our idyllic paradises, but our ecosystem as a whole. Plastic is non-biodegradable. Every year, about 8 million tons of plastic ends up in our oceans, which is equal to 5 bags filled with plastic going along every foot of coastline in the world, according to Plastic Oceans, a nonprofit organization. By 2025, they estimate the annual input will be about twice that. But how exactly does so much plastic and waste end up in our waters? And what happens to that plastic once it's swept away by the ocean's currents? Let's use a plastic bag to illustrate this. This is just one of the many scenarios of how plastic could end up in our waters. After throwing out your plastic grocery bag, it ends up in a landfill and can be swept away by the wind, landing in a river which flows out to sea. The ocean currents may push the plastic bag to a gyre. Think of them like large, slow-moving whirlpools in the ocean. When garbage enters a gyre, it's slowly pulled into the center where they form a huge garbage patch. And while the plastic bag gets sucked in, it breaks down into thousands of floating pieces, adding to the accumulation of trash.
Oceans essentially act as a giant kitchen sink, where because of the way that the wind moves in the tropics and in the subtropics, the ocean's currents start spiraling inward. And as they spiral inward, they take the plastic with them into the center of what's called the gyres in the ocean. And that is where the garbage patches form.
There are 5 giant garbage patches located in the North Atlantic, the South Atlantic, the North Pacific, the South Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. The biggest of the garbage patches is the North Pacific Garbage Patch between Hawaii and California. It is accumulating trash faster than ever and is now 3 times the size of France. The patch contains 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic, which equals 250 pieces for every human being in the world. The total amounts to 80,000 tons. That's almost the equivalent of 2 Titanics. It is also possible that a lot of the plastic swirling around in these great garbage patches could end up moving back to shores. Think about it like a message in a bottle. What goes out into the deep and wild ocean could come back.
So most of the plastic that's in the garbage patch is really quite small already. It's old plastic, it's been in the ocean for years, and the sun and the waves have really broken it down into pieces of plastic not much bigger than a grain.
He says the thing about plastic is that wildlife mistakes it for food.
There's plankton, kind of like algae, that start growing on the plastic. So what you get is a green goo mixed with pieces of plastic. So really it is the small pieces that are harmful to the ecosystems and to everything that lives in the ocean.
Over the last 10 years, we have produced more plastic than all of the 20th century, according to Plastic Oceans. According to Algalita, an organization that researches how to solve the plastic pollution crisis, we should use alternatives to plastic products such as paper or glass. We should be avoiding single-use products such as water bottles, plastic bags, and straws. They also say that it is our responsibility to recycle all materials properly, and municipalities need to improve their waste management systems. When it comes down to it, Eric says there is no way of filtering out the trillions of millimeter-sized plastic bits that have ended up in our oceans.
We can stop the problem from getting even worse by reducing plastic, by asking and demanding better waste management systems, by just making sure that whatever we do with plastic in our economy, in our daily lives, that plastic doesn't end up in our environment, because really it just doesn't belong there.